My mother didn't even lower her voice when she said it. That was the strange part. No anger. No hesitation. Just a sentence delivered between bites, like a reminder about trash day. We were sitting at the dining table, plates still warm, the smell of roasted chicken mixing with lemon cleaner. My father stared at his food. My mother dabbed her mouth with a napkin and said, "You have a month to find a new place. We sold the house. You're out." The words didn't echo. They didn't crash. They settled. I waited for the rest. For reason. For an apology wrapped in logic. My father nodded once, firm like the decision had already been filed away. They stood up minutes later. Chairs scraped softly. My mother said we'd talk details later. Then they left me alone with half-eaten food and a quiet that felt rehearsed. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I sat there, staring at a small burn mark on the table from years ago, remembering how my mother used to scold me for resting hot mugs without coasters. My name is Lena Harper. I'm 28 years old, and the night my parents told me I had a month to leave was the night they assumed pressure would work. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know. I'd moved back after college because it was practical. Temporary. My mother never said home. He said for now. I slept in my childhood room, paid utilities, followed unspoken rules that never changed. I learned to keep plans to myself. The week after that dinner, I played my part. I searched listings. I toured apartments that smelled like fresh paint and compromise. I nodded while landlords talked deposits. I didn't mention the late nights, the spreadsheets, or the calls I made quietly. Because while they were selling the house, I had already bought something else. 6 months earlier, I'd signed paperwork on my lunch break, hands steady, heart loud. No announcement. No celebration. Just preparation. I'd learned early that information was leverage in my family and silence was safer. The month passed. My parents didn't check in. They assumed panic was doing the work for them. I stayed. Paid my share. Kept the peace. By the 3rd month, a realtor appeared on the porch, clipboard tucked under her arm. "Just confirming access," she said. "The property sold." "It did," I replied calmly. "Just not the way you think." She frowned, apologized, and left. That night, a memory drifted in. Me at 16 standing under the porch light while my father said, "Don't get too comfortable. Life moves fast." The light buzzed overhead, insects gathering, his words unfinished. I'd learned then not to unpack too deeply. 6 months after the dinner, my phone buzzed while I was making coffee. "Why are you still there?" Steam fogged the window. The kettle hissed. I read the message twice, then laughed quietly. They had no idea who bought the house. They arrived unannounced that afternoon. My mother's heels clicked sharply against the porch. My father followed, keys already in hand. "You were supposed to be gone," my mother said, stepping inside. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it. "I'm home." "That's not how this works," my father replied. "It is now." My mother crossed her arms. "We sold this place." "Yes," I said. "You did." I walked to the table and handed her a folder. Plain. Heavy. She opened it slowly. I watched her face change, confusion, disbelief, then something like fear. "This can't be right," my father said, leaning closer. "It is," I replied. "I bought the house. Months ago." Silence thickened the room. Outside, dry leaves scraped along the sidewalk. A car passed, indifferent. "You tricked us," my mother whispered. "No," I said. "You decided without me. I prepared without you." She sat down hard. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" I thought about the dinner. The calm delivery. The exit. "Because you didn't ask," I said. "You announced." They stayed longer than I expected. No yelling. No apology. Questions. Calculations. My father asked about paperwork. My mother stared at the walls like she'd never noticed them before. When they finally left, the house felt steadier. Not triumphant. Aligned. That night, I walked the hallway where my height had been marked in pencil, the kitchen drawer that stuck unless lifted. I fixed the crack near the window. Small acts. Permanent ones. I sat on the porch steps, breathing in cool air that smelled like rain and old wood. I realized the house had never been leverage. It had been a test. And I had passed it by staying still. The silence after they left felt different from before. Not hollow. Not sharp. It felt settled, like a room after furniture has finally been placed where it belongs. I stood by the door for a long moment, listening to their car fade down the street, the sound thinning until it disappeared completely. Inside, the house seemed to breathe. I made tea and sat at the same dining table where everything had been decided without me. The overhead light hummed softly. Steam curled from the mug, carrying the faint smell of chamomile. I wrapped my hands around the warmth and let it steady me. A memory drifted in without warning. I was 10, sitting on the stairs while my parents argued in the kitchen. My mother had noticed me and said, "This doesn't concern you." But it always did. It always does when stability is treated like something temporary. The next morning my phone rang. My mother's name lit up the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. She called again an hour later. Then my father. I didn't answer either. Silence, I was learning, could be a boundary too. By the end of the week my mother texted instead. "We need to talk." I replied hours later. "When you're ready to listen." She didn't respond. Days passed. The house settled into a rhythm that felt unfamiliar but comforting. I fixed small things I'd ignored for years. A loose hinge. A dripping faucet. I replaced the light bulb in the hallway that always flickered, casting long, uncertain shadows at night. Each repair felt like a quiet claim. My father came by first. He didn't knock right away. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, staring at the yard like he was seeing it for the first time. "You planned all of this," he said when I opened the door. "I planned for myself," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I don't like how it feels." "I didn't like how it felt to be disposable," I said gently. He looked down at the porch boards, jaw tight. "You always were the careful one." It sounded like a compliment and an accusation at the same time. He didn't stay long. Just long enough to understand that the ground had shifted. My mother waited another week. When she came, she brought a box of old photographs. She held it out awkwardly like an offering. "I thought you might want these," she said. Inside were school photos, birthday cards, small pieces of proof that I'd always belonged somewhere, even when it hadn't felt like it. We sat together on the couch. She didn't lecture. She didn't defend herself. She just looked around the room slowly, touching the armrest, the bookshelf. "I forgot how much of you is in this house," she said quietly. "You didn't forget," I replied. "You just stopped noticing." Her eyes filled. "I thought selling it would push you forward." "It pushed me," I said. "Just not the way you expected." She nodded, absorbing that. "I didn't realize how often we decided things for you." "I did," I said softly. That conversation didn't fix everything. But it cracked something open. When she left, she hugged me carefully like someone relearning how close they're allowed to stand. The story spread through the family quickly. Different versions. Some painted me as clever. Others as cruel. I didn't correct them. I let the truth sit quietly like it always does. My brother called one night, voice unsure. "So, you own it?" "Yes." He laughed softly. "Figures." I should have spoken up. "Yes," I said. There was no anger in it. Just fact. Weeks turned into months. I painted the living room a warmer color. Hung photos where bare nails had waited. I hosted friends without asking permission. Laughed louder. Stayed up late. Left dishes in the sink overnight because no one was counting. One evening my mother texted again. "Can I come by?" I said yes. She arrived with a pie. Apple. My favorite. We ate at the table under the same humming light, the past sitting with us but not dominating the room. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. I believed her. Later that night after she left, I locked the door and leaned against it. The sound was solid. Final. Not defensive. Just certain. I thought about the text she'd sent months earlier. "Why are you still there?" Because I had stopped living on borrowed ground long before they noticed. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. Not because ownership makes you powerful, but because choosing where you stand does. I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs, listening to the house settle around me. The floorboards knew my steps now. The walls held quiet. For the first time, staying felt like freedom. The house didn't change overnight, but I did. It happened quietly, the way shifts always do when no one is watching. I stopped flinching at the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I stopped explaining myself in conversations that hadn't asked for explanations. I started waking up without that familiar knot in my chest, the one that used to tighten every morning like a reminder that nothing here was permanent. I noticed it first in small moments. Standing in the kitchen early one morning, sunlight cutting through the window at a sharp angle, dust floating lazily in the air. The smell of coffee filled the room, rich and grounding. I leaned against the counter and realized I wasn't waiting for anything. No deadline. No announcement. No permission. A memory surfaced then, uninvited. Me at 13, standing in this same kitchen while my mother explained that stability was earned, not given. "Nothing is guaranteed," she'd said, wiping the counter with quick, nervous movements. I'd nodded, not understanding how a child could earn safety. I understood now. Weeks passed. My parents adjusted in their own uneven ways. My father became quieter around me, careful with his words, like someone relearning the rules of a language he thought he already knew. My mother tried harder. She asked questions instead of making statements. Sometimes she slipped. Sometimes I corrected her. Boundaries, I learned, aren't walls. They're muscle. They strengthen with use. One afternoon, an uncle I hadn't seen in years stopped by. He worked construction, always smelled faintly of sawdust and sunblock. He stood on the porch, hands rough, eyes kind. "Your grandparents would have liked this," he said, looking around. "You keeping it?" I smiled. "They taught me not to rush." He nodded. "They taught you right." That quiet support mattered more than he knew. The first family gathering after everything happened was awkward. A small barbecue in the backyard. Charcoal smoke hung heavy in the air. Laughter felt forced at first, conversations careful. I moved through it calmly, flipping burgers, handing out plates, existing without shrinking. At one point, my father stood beside me at the grill. The fire crackled between us. "You handled this better than I did," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I had practice," I replied. He huffed a soft laugh. "Fair." That was all. No apology. No defense. Just an acknowledgement that landed where it needed to. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat on the back steps and listened to the quiet. Dry leaves scraped along the fence in the breeze. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, then stopped. The porch light cast a soft, uneven glow across the yard. I thought about how often we confuse obedience with love. How easily families mistake control for care. I had spent years believing compliance kept me connected. Turned out honesty did that better. The house became less symbolic and more practical with time. I replaced the old lock on the back door. Planted herbs along the fence. Fixed the creak on the third stair that always announced itself too loudly. Each change felt like a conversation with the space, a way of saying I was here to stay. One evening my mother called. Not to ask for anything. Just to talk. "I'm still unlearning things," she admitted. "About you. About us." "So am I," I said. There was a pause, comfortable this time. "I'm glad you stayed," she added. I believed her. Not because words erase the past, but because consistency builds something new. Months later, I found the old envelope tucked in a drawer. Inside was the note I'd written to myself the day I signed the papers, ink slightly smudged. "Don't explain. Don't rush. Trust your timing." I smiled, folded it back up and put it away. If someone had told me a year ago that staying would be the bravest thing I'd ever do, I wouldn't have believed them. I thought strength looked like leaving. Like distance. Like starting over somewhere no one knew your name. But strength, I learned, can also look like standing still when the world expects you to move. Looks like silence when noise would be easier. Like patience when anger would be justified. Like choosing yourself without making it a performance. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. Not because endings need witnesses, but because surviving quietly still matters. That night, I locked the doors and turned off the lights one by one. The house settled into itself, familiar sounds clicking into place. I climbed the stairs slowly, hand brushing the wall, grounding myself in the reality I had built. At the top, I paused and listened. No footsteps. No voices deciding my future without me. Just the soft hum of a home that finally knew who it belonged to. I lay down and closed my eyes, breathing in the stillness. I wasn't waiting anymore. Sometimes staying is enough.